I, Bradaleus Viscarus, your humble servant, present you a written account of the history of the wars, battles, and campaigns waged in the year of our God Emperor 12 of the 42nd millennium, between the divine God Emperor of mankind's Holy Imperium of Man, commanded by Robute Guiliman, Lord Commander of the Imperium, scion of the noble Ultramarines, the avenging Sun, the victorious, the Master of Ultramar, the Blade of Unity, and the first Consul of the 500 Worlds, and the Ruinous Powers of Chaos, heretical servants of the Grandfather of Pestilence Nurgle, commanded by Mortarion, first of the damned servants of the Foul Plague God, wicked scion of the inexorable Death God, the Death Lord, the Pale King, the Reaper of Men, and the Father of Pestilence and Decay, for the lands of Ultramar and the Scourge Stars, within the Ultima sector of the Ultima segmentum of the Galactic East of the domain of the Imperium of Man, which have become to be known as the Plague Wars. This account of these events I have written from the knowledge available to me, and your humble servant has made every attempt to ensure the veracity of what shall be recounted in this work. In spite of this, I urge all men who would read this to study further beyond my own work, for only by the conjoined effort of all my fellows of the Imperium, through debate and discourse, accompanied by great thought and temperance, can we truly recount this pinnacle age of our history for our foresons, that they may know of the great deeds of their forebears. And should this foe appear before them, and all the great heroes and noble veterans of these wars waged have passed into glory and divinity, they would know of our victories, and how to replicate them, and of our follies, and how to avoid them, lest doom be wrought upon our kin and our Imperium. For the young must heed the advice of their elders, but elders must render advice worthy of being heeded. It is for this reason that I write this history, and that I beseech thee, noble reader, to do the same, in honor of our Ultramar, and the will of the Holy God Emperor of mankind. Before we may examine the conflict itself, it is behoove of us to examine the time directly before the conflict began in earnest. For as a history and good practice has taught us, the decision to wage war must be made a great deal of time before the banners are called, or the legions are raised, before man is made to don arms and armor, lest catastrophe and folly be made to follow. Mortarion, Lord of the Death God, understood this well, for while morals, honor, and all good things that made man divine hath departed from him, his mind is still strong in the ways of war-making and battlecraft. So did the Lord of Death, seeing the state of the Imperium, which was weakened due to corruptions and civil strife, and wishing to make war upon them, to claim the bountiful worlds of northern Ultramar, sent agents to create strife and spread disease. These agents created the evils that were the cults of plague, and tried in vain to wrestle control of the northern worlds of Ultramar. These embattled cities became known as the Scourge Stars, for each star was beset by a scourge of plague and disease. The sons of Ultramar, though, were stalwart of heart, and seasoned in statecraft and war-making both, and while these cults damaged the worlds they inhabited, they were ultimately found out and smoked. Yet this would be all for naught, as Ezekiel Abaddon, the Despoiler, War Master of the Imperium Nihilus, Grand War Master of Chaos, and Complete Chaos Lord, and the greatest champion of the Chaos Undivided, made war upon the Imperium of Man, and besieged the fortress world of Cadia, which had long denied him. Yet despite the best efforts of his defenders, due to wicked luck and the foul favor of the dark gods, a vile weapon of war, a fortress of black stone, was laid against mighty Cadia, and lo, the mighty fortress was sundered and destroyed utterly. Thus did evil unknowable, the great rift was formed, and the end of the Imperium seemed nigh. As due to this great victory, all the Ruinous Powers received its boon, as so too did the servants of Nurgle, for they saw this as an opportunity most perfect, and made war upon the realm of Ultramar. Thus this campaign has become known as the War of Flies. Lo, 3 great hosts were arrayed before Ultramar, the largest led by Mortarion himself, another led by Typhus, first captain of the Death God, the Lord of Flies, and the last by Kugath, the Plague Father, a great unclean one, a great edema of the plague god Nurgle. With these great hosts did the death god make war upon Ultramar. Yet so mighty was the 500 worlds, that whilst the defenders were too few to engage in a contest of arms, their strength was so great that all these hosts combined could not siege the jewel of the 500 worlds, Macragge, the capital of Ultramar. So Mortarion, understanding the situation with which he found himself, decided to leave the heartland of Ultramar and raid the outlying planets in an attempt to goad the Ultramarines into open battle. For the sons of Guiliman to see their countrymen slain and their lands ravaged was a terrible sight, and Mortarion knew that if he could not weaken their flesh, he could weaken their resolve. And thus did this raiding and many attacks he sent forth to test the resolve of the defenders would weaken them and lead them ultimately to their doom. For mighty were the men of Macragge, yet only a Primarch could stand against a Primarch, and many a man cursed while the greatest daemons of chaos were leading their hosts. The Imperium had no mighty general, no noble demigod, no son of the Emperor to avenge them. Yet, in due time, they would. Lo, behold now the hallowed Robute Guiliman, scion of the noble Ultramarines, the avenging son, the victorious, the master of Ultramar, the blade of unity, and first consul of the 500 worlds, by the grace of the Emperor of mankind, and the deeds of the Imperium's most holy servants, as well as unlikely allies, was returned to us, and after travelling to Holy Terra, met with his father, and was decreed Lord Commander of all of the Imperium. And seeing the state of the Imperium, of the corruption and kinslaying, and of war being made upon it from all sides, in the steps of his father, he called for a great host to assemble, for all of mankind to unite and drive back the terror of the chaotic enemy. A crusade. The Crusade Indomitus. And the demigod of legend proved the tales of him true, for never in the last 10,000 years was seen a man so adept in the arts of statecraft, war-making, logistics, and dealing with the wills of men. The Crusade Indomitus reached successes unparalleled, and saved the Imperium from utter disaster. For under the gaze of Guiliman, Belisarius Cole, Archmagos Dominus of the Adeptus Mechanicus, the Dominitus Dominus, the Master of Masters, had created the Marines Primaris, a new breed of warrior that surpassed all others that came before them. Together with these new warriors, did Guiliman rejuvenate the dying Imperium, yet for no less than 12 years had passed into the great campaign that the Plague God moved against the Lord of Ultramar, and thus did the first consul of the 500 worlds, leaving their campaign to restore the shadowed lands of the Imperium that have become known as the Imperium Nihilus, as they could not gaze upon the light of the Emperor that is known as the Astronomicon. He did gather his men and march them to Macragge to relieve his home and face his wayward brother. Now that all forces and commanders are present and noted, I shall now list the units, armies, and their commanders that partook in these great wars. Though know, noble reader, that not all those who fought are known, so I relay those unto you with the knowledge of what I have before me. As during the rung of battle, the rush nature of before battle, and the total veer or vaunted elations after said battle's end. Noting the exact numbers of forces under one's command may not take precedence, especially so during a war of this scale and loss. Behold now, the forces arrayed by the Imperium of Man are as such. The Ultramarines chapter in full, 1,000 Marines. The White Scars, 3 hallowed companies, 300 Marines. A unknown contingent of Adeptus Custodes and Sisters of Silence. 1 Brotherhood of the Hallowed Grey Knights, 100 Marines strong. The Ultramar Auxilia in its entirety, millions of elite soldiers. The Ultramar Defense Fleet, the entirety. Know now that much like the PDF that is the Ultramar Auxilia, and unlike the defense fleets of other worlds, The Ultramar defense fleet is far larger and possesses more formidable vessels, such as heavy cruisers, battle cruisers, and grand cruisers. Several Ultramarine successors too join battle with their forebears. The Genesis chapter, 6 companies. The Aurora chapter, 5 companies. The Silver Eagles, 5 companies. The Sons of Aura, 3 companies. The Mortifactors, 3 companies. The Knights Cerulean, 3 companies. The Silver Templars, 3 companies. 14 companies from various other honored chapters. The Death Watch, 21 kill teams. The Nova Marines, 8 companies. The Silver Eagles, 3 companies. The Howling Griffins, 6 companies. The Libiters, 2 companies, all numbering 5,600 Astartes in total, bringing the grand number of Marines to well over a score of 7,000. Lo too did the gracious forces of the almighty Adeptus Mechanicus, servants of the Machine God, join in battle. Legio Oberon, 1 demi-legion. Legio Arturus, 1 demi-legion. Legio Fortis, 1 demi-legion. Legio Praetor, 1 demi-legion. Each demi-legion numbering 25 god machines of various classes and sizes. House Terran, 3 Primus households, numbering 900 knights. House Hawkshroud, 2 Primus households, numbering 600 knights. House Konor, 2 Primus households, numbering 600 knights. 5 legions of the Cybernetic Scitarii, 1,824 infantry each, 120 mechanized cavalry each, and 60 heavy armored vehicles each. 3 stalwart cohorts of the Legio Cybernetica, numbering 1,800 battle automata. Lo, did the daughters of the Emperor, the noble sisters of battle, also join in war. Of the Order of the Valorous Heart, 2 preceptors were sent, numbering 2,000 battle sisters. And lo, did the faithful Imperial Guard send millions of Imperial Guardsmen to aid, with 35 known regiments, including the vaunted veteran heavy infantry regiments of the Indomitus Crusade, several Imperial Navy fleets numbering hundreds of ships, and lo behold, many millions of men, normal farmers, artisans all, took up arms and joined these hallowed forces in defense of their Imperium and the blessed lands of Ultramar. Know now that these forces were led by the Lord Commander and overall Theatre Master, Primarch Robute Guiliman, Chapter Master Manius Calgar, Commander of the Defenses of Ultramar, Tetrarch Decimus Felix, Lord Commander of the Northern Tetrarch of Ultramar, Tribune Octarius Maladorve Colquan, Leader of the contingent of the Adeptus Custodes Shield Company, Fleetmaster Isaiah Kestran, Grand Admiral Leader of all the Imperial Navy Forces, Chapter Master Mario Erloyd of the Genesis Chapter, Chapter Master Brandon Dorvo of the Nova Marines, Lieutenant Andormo, who distinguished himself in the conflicts to come, Brother Captain Ion Gurd, Leader of the Grey Knights Brotherhood, Militant Apostolic Matthew, Leader of the Faithful Pilgrim Bands, as well as the ecclesiastical forces, Colonel Odermea, Grand Lord Commander of all of the Imperial Guard forces. And thus now, though the forces of the wretched Plague God that were made to make war upon the holy realm of Ultramar, the Death Guard Traitor Legion, numbering 40,000 Marines, the Plague Fleet, numbering hundreds of capital ships of various sizes, several war bands of Nurgle, numbering hundreds of Space Marines, Traitor and Renegade Guard, numbering millions of men, several demonic legions and demonic warp engines, numbering in the millions, plague zombies, numbering in the tens of millions, an unknown amount of chaos coats, Legio Pestis, a full demi-legion, numbering 25 god machines, and a detachment of a demi-cohort of Legio Mortis, numbering 25 god machines. They were led and commanded by Primarch Martarian, the overall theater commander and grand general, who led the first fleet personally. First Captain Typhus, commander of the Plague Fleet, leading the 2nd Great Fleet. Kugath, the 3rd Commander, leading the 3rd Plague Fleet and commander of all demonic forces. Epidemius, Lieutenant of Kugath. Septicius, Lieutenant of Kugath. And Quamara, Lieutenant of Kugath. Thus, Guiliman moved against the Death Guard with speed and efficiency, and with surprise, he conquered the hide world of Ardium, slaying the Death Guard garrison to a man and delivering a cruel blow to the Death Guard as he found the ancient artifact known as the Hand of Darkness, which, by sorcery most foul and heretical, crafted plague engines that were reanimating the dead and turning them into plague zombies. Guiliman, seeing this evil heresy, laid waste to the machines, destroying them outright, freeing Ardium and the entire sector from the Death Guard. Lo, did the Death Guard lose the Ardium system, as well as 7 Pox Guard companies, 4 batteries of Dornian heavy artillery, 3 companies of Chem Squads, 2 companies of the Contamination Corps, 1 coven of Dark Magi, the entirety of the Legio Pestistemii Legion, 3 infernal device engines, millions of plague zombies. The forces of the Imperium are unknown to us, nor are their losses, though I would hypothesize that the entirety of the Imperium forces were laid against this wretched foe. The decisive action of Guiliman had delivered the Death Guard a blow most unexpected. Yet, Mortarion, unfazed by this loss, and seeking to return the favor of war to him, and an attempt by the Lord of Death to trap Guiliman in Macragh, so that he could fully occupy northern Ultramar. Thus, did he lead a campaign into the Konor sector. This sector held great importance in means both strategical and moral, as it was home to the ForgeWorld of Konor, the primary means of industry from whence Ultramar received its arms and armor, as well as being the gateway to the heartland of Ultramar. Taking this would render the Avenging Sun and his armies cut off from the rest of Ultramar, as well as the symbolic nature of the land. For many, a son of Ultramar saw the land as blessed, for not only was it bountiful in nature of soil, but also for its history, for the lands were named in honor of Konor Guiliman, hallowed be his name, the adopted father of Guiliman, and thus the sons of Ultramar would feel a great well of pride and awe for this land. And if Mortarion, through strength of arms, were able to conquer it, Ultramar would not have the means to arm its sons, nor would they have the will to fight, for they would have lost heart to see a land so revered and prosperous under the yoke of such a cruel and hated enemy. Thus did Mortarion push deep into the lands of Konor, matching Guiliman's speed, that by the time that Guiliman had marched his army, Mortarion was already within the core of these lands. The Primarch first moved to relieve the besieged world of Astramus. The men of Astramus, with defiance in their hearts, resolved to fight ferociously. It is recorded that they showed much bravery and courage in the face of overwhelming odds. Thus did the stalwart anvil of Astramus hold the enemy in place, as the forces of Guiliman fell upon them from the rear. The Death Guard Marines attempted to hold their lines and break out of the encirclement. Yet, the forces arrayed against them were too great, and they fell. And once their mortal servants, seeing their great champions fell, lost heart and took flight. None was spared, as the vengeful sons of Ultramar fell upon them, reaping bloody retribution for the evils wrought upon their lands and kin. With this great victory, the Imperials wished to push this momentum. Lo, did every able-bodied man from Astramus was summoned to bear arms in defense of the Konor system, and it is said that not one man shirked from his duties, for such were the ways of the son of Ultramar, that every man answered the call. The army then marched to Konor proper. The world was besieged by the Death Guard, and yet the men of Konor held firm, and their counterattack the Imperials was so vicious, and their contempt so strong, that they overwhelmed and overran the traitor lines. This is credited to the vast number of regiments of the Astra Militarum, of all of them veterans of the Indomitus Crusade, armed in the fashion of heavy infantry, much like that of the vaunted Ultramar Auxilia. They proved pivotal as they were the tip of the spear that broke the backs of the traitors. With this complete victory, the Forge World of Konor was reclaimed, and the vast arms and armories it contained was saved. With little rest, the Imperials then moved to the agri-world of Nethermoos. Much importance was placed upon this world, as this was the grain stores of the Konor system. Guiliman knew that if this world fell to the enemy, so too that both man and beast would be defeated, not by force of arms, but of hunger and weakness. Again, the courage and bravery of its defenders is made well known, as they defended wave after wave of Death Guard assault, allowing vital convoys of supplies to reach the army. The fleet of Konor bested their Death Guard counterparts, and thus did Ultramar reclaim its sky. The traitors soon exhausted themselves against the defenders, who had continued to receive reinforcements. The nature of the Death Guard, their being abhorred by the idea of retreat, continued to throw themselves at the defenders. So much so that when the defenders, bolstered by their reinforcements and courage within their hearts, sallied forth to face the enemy in open battle, there was no strength in the Death Guard to oppose them. When the charge came, their lines were broken, and they were all slain. While the planet was saved and the storehouses secured, the land itself was devastated, for more than half of the land was scoured by flames of war and the hungers of man. Whilst the Imperials reclaimed world after world, the servants of the Plague God would not be so easily defeated, for upon Vanator, the astropathic relay system, the hub of all communication in the lands of Konor, the foul magics and wicked sorceries of the Ruinous Power was brought to bear before the sons of Ultramar. As the world was filled with sickness and disease, and lo, a grave darkness fell upon the lands therein, and daemons and all foul warp spawn were spewed forth from the world, as pus running from an infected wound. The Imperial counterattack to reclaim the world, though filled with courage and bravery, was ultimately for naught. Lo, even though the siege assaults were led by the vaunted Brotherhood of the Grey Knights, the garrison of the world was too great. The army was decimated, defeated, and made to retreat, lest they be surrounded by an assault of the enemy and destroyed. The Renthal, the home port of the fleets of Konor, was taken by storm after a short siege. This was a grave blow to the Imperials, as the world had long been a stronghold of the Navy, from whence ship and sailor both could be found, and ships and aircraft could find safe harbor and shelter. Yet no more would this be, for the Death Guard had garrisoned the world well, for they too knew of the value of this world in which they held, and despite the gallantry and valor of the Imperial besiegers, they could not take the city by storm or by siege. Thus, they took flight and lifted the siege, lest they be surrounded and destroyed. Despite these setbacks, the Imperium was triumphing, yet the Pale King had a trick with which he sought to unravel the armies of Ultramar, the death world of Lobos, the lands barren and devoid of life and succor. Yet, it was perfect for the Lord of Death's scheme. He made the world ill, infecting it with disease, and giving it motion with great engines powered by warp fire. With this moving world of disease, Mortarion, Primarch of the Death Guard, hoped to smash through the Imperium's defenses, using the planet itself to destroy the Konor system. The Imperials, foreseeing this doom, steeled their hearts, and filled them with courage, and the resolve unwavering, took action most noble. For every available man, ship, and vehicle moved against the befouled world, which had all Death Guard forces garrisoned upon it. And lo, the sons of Ultramar, both gene-born and mortal men, threw themselves upon the spears of the Death Guard, for not one of them gave thought of tomorrow, or of hearth or home. Nay, for that day, the hearts of the sons of Ultramar were filled with only black rage, and that rage demanded of them a blood toll that must be paid, and paid it was. The navy of the Imperium, suffering greatly upon its force of escorts, was able to transport man and vehicle both upon the surface of the world. From there, two forces were arrayed against the Death Guard. One of vehicle armored might, venerable land raiders, swift rhinos, vaunted Leman Rosses, and devastating basilisks. This, as well as all manner of armored vehicle, was sent forth. Lo, for their charge was so devastating and brutal in equal measure, for they gave no thought of their own lives, and slew all around them, even as their own comrades fell at their feet. The reason for the rage and violence of this charge was so that the other force would not be noticed. Smaller teams of elite warriors, Tempestus Scions, Ultramar Praetorians, and Space Marine veterans would enter the great engines under the cover of darkness and bring ruin upon these great constructs with cyclonic fire. And when these great engines had been brought down, and the Imperials had set charges to destroy the planet as a whole, the Imperials fell back, lest they be consumed by the fire of the dying world. And so did Lobos meet its end. The world shattered, and the last gambit of the Plague King found lacking, and the lands of Konor were secured and made safe, as small pockets of garrisons either fled or were surrounded and slain by the vengeful Ultramarines. Mortarian's gambit had failed, and a hole was present in the battle lines of the Death Guard. Guiliman, seeing this and wishing to continue the momentum, bolstered by successor chapters and reinforcements from the Forge Worlds, surged forward, launching a campaign into the Espandor system, which became known as the Spear of Espandor counterattack. Achieving victory here would render a consequence twofold. 1. The Death Guard would no longer have a foothold from which to launch the devastating raids which had so harmed the outer worlds of Ultramar, and 2, it would cut off the Death Guard from the reinforcements of man and supplies which they had gotten from the Scourge Stars. And lo, with this mighty blow, the Death Guard would not recover, as they already had lost much of their strength in the prior campaigns. The Imperials ignored the raids and skirmishes of the Death Guard, and focus upon taking one world at a time, surrounding it before storming it with all their might, quickly taking the world and slaughtering its defenders. Seeing this, and realizing the Imperials would not falter, the leader of the Death Guard in Espandor, the Great Unclean One, known as Qualma, Lieutenant of Kugath, gathered what forces he could, and forced the Imperials into open battle. The battle was ferocious, with the Imperials launching savage charge after savage charge, but the lines of the Death Guard would not be broken. Behold now, it was not until the Lord of Macragge, Robute Guiliman, led his Ultramarines personally and struck into the heart of the foe. There, he and the Great Unclean One Qualma did battle, with Guiliman laying low the foul being, by smoting his head with the Emperor's sword, laying low the foul tyrant. The force of the Death Guard, seeing their lord fallen, and the mighty Ultramarines charging forth with renewed vigor, lost heart and fled the field. They were pursued by the Ultramarines, and hunted down to the lost, slaughtered all. Behold now the order of battle for Espandor. Ultramarines, 7 companies. The Genesis chapter, 6 companies. The Aurora chapter, 5 companies. The Silver Eagles, 5 companies. The Sons of Aura, 3 companies. The Mortifactors, 3 companies. The Knights Cerulean, 3 companies. The Grey Knights 7th Brotherhood. Various vaunted chapters of Ultramarine descent, 14 companies. The Imperial Guard, as well as the Ultramar Auxilia, millions of men, the contingent of Sisters of Silence and Adeptus Custodes, as well as the 2 Preceptories of the Sisters of Battle of the Order of the Valorous Heart, numbering 2,000 battle sisters. The forces of the Death Guard were unknown, though they contained a high number of demonic entities. With this great defeat, Mortarian, Lord of the Death Guard, resolved to concentrate his forces upon the world of Palmero. There, he was reinforced by the army of Kugath, and laid siege to the world. Here, for all to see, there would be the largest Titan battle of the war, and lo, upon the plains of Hecaton, did the mighty god machines, incarnation of the machine god's will, do great battle. Such was the devastation wrought upon them, that the very world seemed to quake, and there was worry that the world itself would be turned to ruin by the fury of the god machines, both loyalist and traitor alike. In the stars above, the star fort Galantan attempted to provide support, but was boarded by the Plague Fleet, and massive casualties ensued, including the loss of the Nova Marine's most hallowed chapter master, Bardon Darvo, martyred upon the field of battle. Upon the surface, the Primarch Guiliman, once again leading his Ultramarines personally, struck at the heart of the enemy lines, laying low Kugath's vanguard, and slew his lieutenant Septicus in battle. The day seemingly belonging to the Ultramarines, yet not so, for a trap was sprung, as the army of Typus was also at Permenion, and struck at the Imperials from the rear. Their goal being to reach the Lord of Macragge and slay him, winning the war in one fell swoop. And so would it have been, if not for the intervention of the God Emperor himself. For upon the field of battle did he send a living saint in the form of a young girl. And behold now, that from her eyes came balls of heaven fire, and from her mouth shrew bolts of blessed lightning. From her divine form a holy aura persisted, which lent the strength to the Imperials, and drained the might of the Death God. Seeing that the Emperor was with them, and the bitter shame they felt from seeing their liege lord nearly laid low at the hands of the foul heretics. Thus were the Imperials filled with a renewed purpose, and they charged forth with ferocious might. With this, the Death Guard counterattack was reversed, and the Death Guard managed to retreat in good order, though they were pushed out of the Parmenian system entirely. Know now, the forces of the Imperium are as such: Ultramarines, 3 companies; hundreds of neophytes, White Scars, 3 companies; millions of Imperial Guard and Ultramar Auxilia regiments; the Adeptus Mechanicus, low 2 broad forces of Legio Baron, the full Demi-Legion; Legio Arteris, full Demi-Legion; Legio Fortis, full Demi-Legion; House Terron, 3 full households; House Hawkshroud, 2 full households; House Konor, 2 full households; 5 legions of the Cybernetics Catarii; 3 cohorts of the Legio Cybernetic Automatons; and upon the store fort of Galan, 5 companies of the vaunted Nova Marines, 21 kill teams of the Elite Death Watch, the 7th Brotherhood of the Grey Knights, as well as several regiments of the Ultramar Auxilia. Now did the Death Guard bring before them to bear 4 plague companies of the Children of Blight, 12 companies, the Befoulers, 7 Claw Corps, the Rot Reapers, 4 companies, the Blight Guard, 14 regiments, the Filth Engines, 7 regiments, the Steel Tide, 15 companies, the Iron Hulks, 12 regiments, the Plague Reapers, 3 companies, the Tortorian Heavy Artillery, 2 batteries, the 7 Blights, 7 Blight Towers, Legio Mortis detachment of 25 guard machines, and House Slugthorn, 3 Primus Grade households, numbering 900 knights. Thus, with this mighty blow, the Death Guard had been pushed back to the lax system. Here they reformed and prepared to lure Guiliman into a trap in an attempt to slay him with the God Blight, a wicked illness most foul, made specifically to poison the Primarch. It was, at this time, however, that the Ruinous Powers' fickle nature would once again see them turn upon each other, as another civil war was begun between all 4 of their number. Nurgle, seeing this, recalled many of his demonic legions, as the heartland of his empire was endangered, with Typhus departed with his army to garrison the first 3 systems of the Scourge Star, known as Noxious, Rotgrave, and Verminox. Mortarion and Kugath were ordered by the Plague God to abandon the Scourge Stars and return to defend the Gardens proper. Yet, in pursuit of glory, land, and honor, Mortarion and Kugath both disobeyed the orders of the Grandfather and continued with their plan to slay the Avenging Sun. Guiliman, in all his knowledge of war making, was privy to the possibility of a trap. Yet, he knew also that if he defeated the Death God on Lox, the Ultramar system would be saved and the Scourge Stars open for reconquest. And lo, did the Scion of the Ultramarines take up his arms and lead the Indomitus Crusade Fleet Primus, campaigning into the lax system in an attempt to drive the Death God out of his home. Guiliman, leading the bulk of the army, struck at Mortarion, and the two entered a battle most fierce. While this was waged, a force of Space Marines and Cadian heavy infantry regiments sought to destroy the fragment of the Cauldron of Nurgle which lent form to the Daemon spawn. And lo, that 7 Space Marines, led by Lieutenant Dermio of the vaunted Nova Marines chapter, Justinian Paris, and Colonel Ordemeyer of the hallowed Imperial Guard, joined by militant Apostolic Matthieu, who, by the grace of the God Emperor of mankind, was made to be a living saint of the Imperium of Man. And thus did Kugath, Demon Prince of Nurgle, and Great Unclean One, was laid low, his mortal form smote, and his ruin desecrated upon the earth of Lax. And thus did all demons fall upon Lox, falling back into the howling darkness, for gone was the malignant power of the warp. But militant apostolic Matthew, as well as Colonel Ordamea, would both be slain in this valiant strike, and forever remembered as martyred heroes of the Imperium of Man. The war was not well with the Imperium, as Guiliman was laid low by the Death Lord, as due to the boons of the warp, Mortarion was able to best the Lord of Ultramar, and thus did he poison the Primarch with the god blight most foul, and lo, did the first counsellor of Macragh fall to the Pale King, and so did it seem that all was for naught, and Ultramar was now doomed. Yet, not so, for once again, the might of the God Emperor was displayed on full. Praise unto the glory of his grace, for according to Lord Guiliman himself, as he fell, he saw a meeting with his father, the very same one he had on Holy Terror nigh 12 years ago, and at the end, he resolved to fight and never yield. And with that, he was returned to life. And now, the Lord of Ultramar rose, renewed with golden light. Mortarion, seeing this, was struck with awe, and resolved in his heart to charge forth and slay the Primarch again. But channeling the might of the God Emperor, Robute Guiliman, Primarch of the Ultramarines, Lord Commander of the Imperium, by the grace of the God Emperor of mankind, with which the sword of the Emperor struck Mortarion, Lord of the Death God, first of the servants of the Plague God, and slew him, sending his damned soul back into the warp. And then Guiliman struck at the Garden of Nurgle itself, destroying its hold over Ultramar, and removing its foul taint. Lo, did the Adepts Custodes, Life Wardens of the Emperor, now become the Life Wardens of the Emperor's son, as Tribune Colquhoun was able to evacuate Guiliman and all Imperial forces, as the planet was sundered by Exterminatus. The shattered forces of the Death Guard fell back to the Scourge Stars, and thus the Death Guard would never lay foot into Ultramar proper. The order of battle is as follows: 8 companies of the Ultramarines, 3 companies of the Nova Marines, 3 companies of the Silver Eagles, 6 companies of the Howling Griffins, 2 companies of the Lobitas, all of the Imperial Guard within system, all of the Ultramar Auxilia within system, the entirety of the Adeptus Mechanicus, including the Demi-Legions of Praetor, as well as the full 5 Scutario Legions, as well as the Legio Cybernetica cohorts and Night Houses, as well as 3 companies of the vaunted Silver Templars. The traitors, bearing all their might, had upon them the full remaining Death Guard Legion, the full chapter of the Scabbed, 5 companies of the Hell Trenches, 7 Plague-Bearer Legions of the Sothkin, 7 Plague-Bearer Legions of the Carian Legion, 7 Plague-Bearer Legions of the Talliers of the Dead, 3 Primus Grade households of House Drenar, numbering 900 knights, the Anointed, an unknown number of Chaos cults, Keepers of the Cauldron, a wicked sorcerer cult, 3 Chem Legions of the Infumers, 7 Pestigor Beastmen Legions of the Silverhorn Legions. After a brief respite, the Lord Commander of the Imperium recovered. He began to restore Ultramar to its former glory. Despite the best efforts of the Imperials, a great deal of Ultramar was devastated by war and famine, and by the grace of the God Emperor, the Primarch of the Ultramarines once again displayed his mastery of statecraft and empire building, restoring Ultramar and even surpassing its former glory. He also implemented new garrison bastions along the northern border and productions of new Primaris Space Marines and Ultramar Auxilia to garrison said mighty bastions. This, as well as reforming the defenses of Ultramar to ensure that no son of Ultramar would ever again fall to the vile cult worship of the Dark Gods. However, the Lord of Macragh would be called to aid the rest of the Imperium and continue his crusade Indomitus. With this, Marneus Calgar, regent of Ultramar, was given command of the forces of Ultramar, and lo, with vengeance in his heart, and buoyed by the successes of his father, Lord Calgar sought to expel the traitor from the entirety of Ultramar and the Scourge Stars, and reclaim the lost territory of the Imperium. And thus, did the regent of Ultramar assemble a great host of Ultramarine successor chapters, Night Houses, countless veterans of the Ultramar Auxilia and Imperial Guard, and launched punitive campaigns into the Scourge Stars and Tellaris systems. And such was the wrath of the Imperials and the disarray of the Death Guard, that one by one, these planets fell to the vengeful sons of Ultramar, so that only 3 worlds of Noxius, Rotgrave, and Verminox, the greatest of all, would be held by the Death God, and thus did the regions of Ultramar return from campaign triumphant, and, as his father, further bolstered Ultramar's defenses, and continued to restore its glory. Thus did the wars of which Mortarion, first damned of the servants of the foul Plague God, wicked scion of the inexorable Death God, the Death Lord, the Pale King, the Reaper of Men, and Father of Pestilence and Decay, of the Ruinous Powers of Chaos, heretical servants of the Grandfather of Pestilence Nurgle, who made war upon Robute Guiliman, Lord Commander of the Imperium, scion of the noble Ultramarines, the Avenging Sun, the Victorious, the Master of Ultramar, the Blade of Unity, and the first consul of the 500 worlds, of the divine God Emperor of mankind's most holy Imperium of Man, for the lands of Ultramar and the Scourge Stars, within the Ultima sector of the Segmentum Ultima of the Galactic East, of the domain of the Imperium of Man, which had become known to the Plague Wars, did end with the Imperium of Man victorious, and the forces of the Death God routed, losing only 3 worlds to the heretics, and reaping a bloody retribution of the forces of the Plague God. As for those lost, it is unknown to us, but millions of Ultramar's brave sons died to defend her, and we do know that the heretics suffered greater losses than us. Even more so, great discord was sown between the Plague God and his generals, as Kugath and Mortarion both fell out of favor of the Plague God, as the forces of the Ruinous Power, further divided and concerned with making war upon each other and amongst each other, rather than reaping the blood of the sons of Ultramar. Thus does the history of the Plague Wars and this work conclude. And I, Pradaleus Viscarus, your humble servant, pray thee, noble reader, have learnt much from this work, and have had your spirit renewed, and resolve in thine heart to strive forward, as in accordance with the divine will of the God Emperor of mankind. I salute you, noble reader, and wish well upon thee and thy kin. May the God Emperor protect thee and thy house always. Glory unto the Lord Commander of the Imperium, and praise to thee who sits upon the golden throne of Terra, ad imperatum Deus Imperium. Hey everyone, Brad here. So, just wanted to let you guys know that this is something new that I'm trying out. I was doing some history and I was watching a documentary about Justinian's Wars of Reconquest, and it had a lot of exoscripts of Procopius and his writings, and I was just really moved that I wanted to do something myself. So I'm trying this new style of lore, way more serious, scripted far more like, again, an old history lesson from like the days of the Romans and stuff. So yeah, let me know how you guys like it. I would really like to start including one of these every now and again. The regular ones will still have their memes in them, but yeah, I just really saw this. I wanted to try it, and this will delay the Lamentus video a little bit, but don't worry, I gave you this to chew on in the meantime. But yeah, comment down below, let me know what you guys think, and real quick, I will link right now in the pinned comment, and as well as in the description, a chap which I want all of you to go and check out, known as the Gaming Storyteller, aka Dutch. This chap, quality channel. It's a small channel, much like myself, and he does great videos, and he is very passionate, and he just loves this universe and IP. So go over there after you're done watching this video. Well, I mean, you're already at the end, so if you're reading this and hearing this, you will go there. But go over there, give him a shout, tell him that the general sent you, and show him some love. He deserves it. He's a great guy. Anywho, that has been me. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you very much for watching. As always, Patreon, buy me a coffee, Discord. Join the Discord. It's bumping. We can talk about nonsense there. Yeah. Like, comment, share, subscribe. All that wonderful YouTube stuff. Stay true out there, boys and gals. And I will catch you all next time. Dismissed, Rangers! Oh, wait, hold on. It's nearly 1 hour. Okay, but by the time I cut it up, it won't be 1 hour. But, you know, that's still cool, though. That's not bad. But a while since I posted something that was 1 hour long.